Hey everyone, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for another installment of my weekly countdown show, 7 on Sunday. This series is where I take a topic and talk about my favorite and least favorite things, or maybe it's just something that I find interesting and want to pass on to you. It's all about music and entertainment, so make sure you subscribe for the love of music. Anyways, the first episode this year is dedicated to rock bands that have gone soft. Oh no, what does that mean? Does it mean they've sold out? Does it mean they've gone pop? Does it mean they've changed their sound entirely? Well, the answer is yes to all of those things. Let's buckle up and find out what's going on with these rock bands. Why have they changed their sound? This has been one of the most requested episodes that I've had ever since I made the 7 bands that have drastically changed their sound video. And of course, if you would like to see another installment of this in the future, drop a comment. And of course, you can feel free to leave suggestions for future episodes for 2019. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoy it today, and keep in mind that not everything that I'm saying here is negative. Not every rock band gone pop is a bad thing. Of course, there will be bad examples that I'm going to share, but there's also great examples, bands that matured and also just branched out, tried some new things, and it worked out for them.
Well, she wants to be the queen. Can't let this moment slip away.
From roots rock and alternative to untrimmed chest hair. Thanks Pat Monahan and thanks Train for that horrible vision. The first victim on the list today, at number 7 we have Train, a band that started off with their self-titled album that was more of a pop rock affair, definitely some roots rock, some vintage sounds flaring up, even some guitar solos. It wasn't necessarily something that I enjoyed, but there are some good songs on there. Meet Virginia is something that I'll occasionally listen to if it pops up at a playlist, and then in the early 2000s, they had Drops of Jupiter from an album of the same name that, of course, is a staple, something that people are going to sing along to at karaoke night or what have you. They eventually took some time off between 06 and 09, and then they bounced back with the album where everything changed, Save Me, San Francisco. Pat Monahan definitely got the pop fever with this one because, my God, Hey Soul Sister would not die. That song is a stain, just an abomination that I cannot look past. The lyrical content is so damn pitiful. It's something that sounds like it was written by a 3rd grader that was turning in a bad creative writing assignment, and it didn't get much better from there. It was clear that they were ready to trade in the stadium rock-ready choruses of Drops of Jupiter for more cash-out worthy singles like Angel in Blue Jeans and 50 Ways to Say Goodbye, which didn't start off all that annoying, but then I heard it 50 times, and my God, I wanted it to stop. They continued down this rabbit hole with Bulletproof Picasso and A Girl, a Bottle, a Boat, the band's most recent album at the time of recording this video in early 2017. That album opens up with the song Drink Up, which I think is catchy enough. I'd take it any day over Hey Soul Sister, but if you play that next to Meet Virginia, would you even think it's the same band? Train may no longer have their dignity, but at least they've got some giant paychecks that they can continue cashing for years to come. Play that song or don't, it really doesn't matter because they've made their money.
Whatever makes it right, but I got it where I want it now. I'm just a little bit caught in the middle.
Evening out the playing field, at number 6 we have Paramore. This band was early on known for their pop-punk stylings and also emo tendencies. All We Know Is Falling and Riot between 2005 to 2007 definitely followed that formula. They had a lot of teenage angst fueling them with hits like Misery Business and Emergency and Pressure. There were so many great songs on there, but it was clear that they did have a knack for pop hooks. Now, this translated later in albums like Brand New Eyes to more of an alternative rock sound that I absolutely adored, and then into the more experimental 2013 self-titled record. It was there that we saw not only some of their heaviest tracks like Part 2, but also their mainstream pop sensibilities, as Still Into You and also Ain't It Fun were top 40 hits. After a lot of inner turmoil in the band, lead vocalist Hayley Williams eventually got sick of it all, fell into a state of depression, and almost ended Paramore. Fortunately, that was not the end. Zach Farrow, the drummer and original member, eventually came back, and both him, alongside Taylor York and Hayley Williams, crafted After Laughter. This is an album that is vastly different from the heyday of emo and pop punk, but it is an amazing album that has pop sensibilities, 80s influences, but also manages to dominate with some great guitar performances that are very slick, very different, very disco dipped in places, and it proves that a band can go into a pop direction and still sound amazing and have a smart wit about them. AEROSMITH grabbed the number 5 position today. This is a band that has definitely undergone a lot of plastic surgery, I suppose, as a band, and also probably Steven Tyler as a frontman. I think that him and Joe Perry are the name that most people recognize, and you probably, if you had to really quickly off the top of your head, name an AEROSMITH song. What would you say? I Don't Want to Miss a Thing? That would be most people's answer. That came out in the late 1990s on the Armageddon soundtrack, but little did some people know that this band existed for decades on end before that, having amazing albums like Toys in the Attic, and also other records like Draw the Line, where you could see their pop tendencies, but it also had a great melody, a great sense of structure, and doing things with a kind of larger than life appeal, but still rocking out big time. It wasn't until the 90s that we started to see a change, and while they did have some solid outings during those early 90s years, I think the late 90s, of course, and the single I Don't Want to Miss a Thing were the turning page for AEROSMITH. That single was literally everywhere. You could not escape it. It is still to this day one of the slow dance songs. You're gonna hear it at a wedding, you're gonna hear it in a movie trailer, you're gonna hear it in a TV show, whatever the case might be, the song is inescapable. I don't think it's the worst thing ever, sure it's overplayed to death, but it definitely saw AEROSMITH going in a very pop-friendly direction. Now, with their albums that came in subsequent years, which were very spotty just because of the band's relationship, I think that the members don't even really like each other that much. It's pretty evident at this point that they're just kind of doing things for paychecks, but also, I guess, can you blame them to an extent? I'm sure a lot of people do. I just don't care. Music from Another Dimension was a pretty rough outing as a whole, but I think the most cringe-inducing moment was the Carrie Underwood collab, Can't Stop Loving You, which was, ooh boy, that was rough. Really bad musically, the vocals did not mesh well together, and the worst part is that I think it exists because it was trying to piggyback off of the success of like that hard rock band gone a little bit more country, and they try to collab with someone from that realm, like Bon Jovi did with Jennifer Nettles on Who Says You Can't Go Home. And here we have an extremely inferior version of that, and it just makes you wonder, what happened, AEROSMITH? The four Follow-Well family members come in at number 4 as the band Kings of Leon. They started out with a love of southern rock on their early singles like Molly's Chambers, Four Kicks, and Red Morning Light, all songs that I think are fantastic, as were their early records like Youth and Young Manhood. I would say that their defining record is probably the 2007 studio set Because of the Times. It was a more nuanced and more eclectic range of songs that we got there, and some deeper, more meaningful songwriting. Of course, they hit it big time in 2008 with the album Only by the Night, led off by the single Sex on Fire, which dominated the alternative scene. And then later on, we had Use Somebody, which you could not go without hearing between 2008 and 2010. What made them so big on this record? Well, of course, Caleb Followill still had his very unique voice. Those pipes are definitely something that register instantly with the mind, but they had a more pop-friendly sensibility to the songwriting. The songs were driven by big, stadium-ready hooks and some soaring backing vocals. You can see that clearly on Use Somebody with those oh. They remained pretty relevant and successful in the years that followed, putting out the album Come Around Sundown that was a more country and southern influenced affair, although it was a little bit lighter and easier to digest, not as heavy hitting as some of their earlier LPs. And also they put out Mechanical Bull, which was a much more raw and explosive album that kind of saw them paying homage to their roots with a more updated sound. I do think that 2016's album Walls, We Are Like Love Songs, was the biggest change that we've seen to date, featuring some of the more weird songs, like obviously Muchacho. They had a very spry and nimble lead single, Waste a Moment, from that one, which I thought was really fantastic. honestly a little bit underrated. The fact that fans kind of glazed over it and were like, we missed the old sound. And I'm like, this is still really good. So Kings of Leon, good on you for working with Marcus Drabs, an awesome producer who produced Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends by Coldplay back in 2008, then worked on this, brought his chops to the table. They've just done the pop thing, I suppose, in a much better manner than many of the others on this list.
Let a girl talking away. She found a voice she knew she'd change. We can be legends after all. We can be legends, we can be legends.
Speaking of better than the others on the list, we have to talk about Sleeping with Sirens next. Yay! Sleeping with Sirens had a steady drift into pop music after releasing their debut album and exploding onto the quote scene, but after that they lost not one but two of their guitarists, which I feel later had an impact on them. It wasn't immediately felt, as their next album, Let's Cheers to This, featured some heavier singles and of course classics like If You Can't Hang that are well known and loved in the scene. It's something where they kind of moved on from that and went into their next record, Feel, and then they started writing songs from a very formulaic point of view. It was seen evidently and clearly on singles like Alone featuring Machine Gun Kelly and many of the others that felt braggadocious, kind of mainstream top 40 reaching, and just all over the place. Despite their fading relevancy, the group somehow managed to land a major label contract with Warner Brothers Records before the release of their 2017 album Gossip, and they truly let the pop go to their heads here. It's a shame what happened to Sleeping with Sirens because they do have potential, but the songs that they're writing now, even the more rock-oriented ones, they're just bare bones. They don't have feeling to them, and that's unfortunate for a band that once held promise.
You need a taste of your own medicine.
Bring Me the Horizon being on this list kind of explains itself. You probably know and expected to see this one, but seriously, try listening to the deathcore Pray for Plagues next to their new single from Amo, Medicine. It's one of the biggest swerves that I've ever seen, and the craziest part is that they've actually pulled it off and managed to bring a ton of fans along with them. Now, obviously, you would think that a lot of bands, when they try to shake up things, a lot of the fan base falls off and they gain a top 40 crowd that's not as dedicated. That hasn't yet happened with Bring Me the Horizon. They have a very large following, and I understand why. I've really enjoyed their recent output, everything from 2010's album There Is a Hell, and then especially their magnum opus 2013 Sempiternal, and even That's the Spirit. Their new material is definitely dividing fans, and there's always going to be those angry Facebook comments saying, oh, they've changed, they sold out, they mixed things up. But the fact is, Oliver Sykes and Jordan Fish from the band have stated that they're kind of bored with the state of rock, and they're not being inspired by that. They're trying new things, and I say let them experiment, because a lot of the stuff that they're putting out, while it's not for everyone, and I can fully admit that, it's at least interesting, and it's more interesting than a lot of the bland radio rock that's coming through our speakers right now. In darkness, she is all I see. At number one, we went from that. We went from the blue-eyed soul, the funk, and the alternative pop rock, I suppose, of the debut and the sophomore album, songs about Jane and It Won't Be Soon Before Long, to stuff like V, Overexposed, and God forbid, their most recent album, Red Pill Blues. How did Maroon 5 end up landing at number one on this list? How did this rock, or at least pop rock band, go full on pop top 40 trying to follow any trend that they possibly could? Well, the answer can pretty much be summed up in Adam Levine's ego. Adam is the lead singer of this band and pretty much the only main contributing member. They have a ton of outside co-writers at this point, everyone from Julia Michaels, Justin Tranter, all those other top 40 people, and their songs sound so dime a dozen and rely heavily on the guest features because their star power has faded. They call on Cardi B, SZA, and Kendrick Lamar, Future, among others, to get their names out there and to keep themselves relevant. I sadly do have an explanation for how this all came to be. It started with their 2010 album Hands All Over, which wasn't great, which it also wasn't that bad. I think a lot of people tend to look at that as the falling out point, like you either jumped ship or else probably jumped on the ship at that point and became a fan because of their later pop material. But Hands All Over, it didn't perform as well as the band wanted it to. So what did they do next? Well, they collaborated with Christina Aguilera in 2011 on Moves Like Jagger. It blew the hell up, and Adam was like, hey, I think we could keep doing this if we keep chasing trends. Adam Levine's ego quickly soared over 9,000, and they quickly followed up the singles success with an album Overexposed in 2012. It was all downhill from there. You've heard the cringy hits like Animals and Payphone featuring Wiz Khalifa, which his verse has nothing to do with the rest of the song, but that is neither here nor there. Maroon 5 changed big time. Listen to Don't Wanna Know next to Sunday Morning, and you'll know exactly what I'm unfortunately talking about. That's it for the first episode of 7 on Sunday for 2019. Please drop a like on the video and show support for the series moving over to ARTV. Drop a comment down below letting me know what are some other rock bands that went pop. Obviously, we could name Imagine Dragons, but I felt that was a little bit too cliched to put on here. I've talked about them enough. If you guys want to see a part 2 of this video at some point, then drop a comment saying part 2. If you would like to support the channel on Patreon, then please click the annotation in the corner or else the top link down below. If you would like to catch up on the last episode of 7 on Sunday, then tap right here or tap here for a recent review. Other than that, socials in the description, and I'll see you soon for more on ARTV.